Hi guys, welcome back to the Spurred on podcast. We're recording this Wednesday night, but this is going to go out on Thursday. It's just a kind of catch up of all the latest Spurs news, and with me on the channel to talk about our magnificent club and all that's going on, it's Sonny from SonnyTalksSpurs. How are you, mate?
I'm very, very good. Looking forward to my debut on your channel, on the podcast as well. Excited to talk about some good Spurs stuff. This season's been fantastic so far, so very, very excited.
Exactly. And guys, if you're not already subscribed to SonnyTalksSpurs, go over to them. It's in the description box or search for it in your YouTube search box. Just give him a subscribe. He's great content maker. But let's get started. And I wanted to talk about something that's potentially controversial. There seems to me, Sonny, a little bit of a kind of change in the narrative, not like throughout the whole fan base, but certainly a little bit on whether potentially Daniel Levy isn't as much of a pariah as a lot of the Spurs fan base think. Now that we're seeing all of these kind of PSR and FFP charges coming and not much money being spent this January, people are starting to say, wait, hold on. Has he actually got this right in the long term? Worth asking you, I think, Sonny, what are your feelings on him overall? And is this a time where Tottenham can really start to look up and maybe we will be spending more than other clubs?
I mean, when it comes to Daniel Levy over the years, I've been very on the fence about him. I think some of his footballing decisions have been questionable. I mean, most fans were not happy about Jose Mourinho being sacked up into the lead up of a final, but I myself didn't mind it too much because Jose was being quite, he was a problem at the club.
And the football
And
was
then
appalling, wasn't it? Let's face it.
that's the thing. I mean, it had to be done, but then there's other things where we didn't spend for a calendar year. But then on the flip side, I think Daniel Levy is one of the best businessmen in football. Just look at our stadium, look at our training ground, state of the art. He has been very savvy in that. Even having the nous to go for Ange Postecoglou when many were criticising him takes a lot of balls from him. To pardon my French, but I do think now we're seeing a different iteration of Daniel Levy. We're seeing this time last year and a bit further forward in the months, lots of protests, lots of anger from the Spurs fan base. I don't know if you went over Spurs much last season, Barnaby, but I
I,
went
I
to the
was I
Arsenal.
was I was there, Sonny, but I wasn't part of the protest.
Yeah, but even I went to the Arsenal and West Ham games, notably, and the toxicity around the club was, you know, it was like a cauldron most weeks, and that was mainly all aimed at Daniel Levy, and obviously some of Conte as well. But
Mm.
obviously Ange coming in and injecting his persona and personality into the football club has lifted spirits, and not many people are calling for Levy out. There will always be a certain fan base, members of the fan base who will always be Levy out, but now with him bringing in Johan Lang, using Fabio Paratici in whatever capacity that is now.
Yeah, a secret one.
He's got a secret one indeed
Yeah,
from his prison cell.
yeah.
I think this new Daniel Levy era seems quite interesting, and coinciding with the whole Enoch stuff, that happened a few months back as well, is quite interesting to see what the direction of the football club can go in.
Yeah, and I think you alluded to it, but isn't it just the case that if people are willing to blame Daniel Levy every time, let's say, in inverted commas, win now manager is getting bad results, for the same way, or in the same way, you have to give him credit for the fact that, Ange Postecoglou was it was a dangerous appointment because he hadn't managed in a top, what's deemed to be a top league. Sure, he'd won a lot of trophies, but if we'd lost our first three matches, then for sure Daniel Levy would be copping all of it. So I do kind of think you have to give him props where he deserves them.
Exactly, and I at the time when he appointed Mourinho and Conte, I understood his mentality around
Me
that.
too,
I
yeah.
thought, we've got this squad, players at the peak of their powers in the likes of Kane, Son. Let's try and win now. And it does annoy me, this whole like Tottenham need a trophy, because it seems to weigh down on the club, and it probably weighs down on Levy. He's got the whole of a fan base and rivals all acting like oh, you think you're a big club, all this sort of thing, but you haven't won anything since haven't won an FA Cup since '91 and the League Cup since 2008-09. So you've got that sort of pressure.
Mm.
And but there are some fan base who go, well, wait a minute, I'm old enough to remember when Tottenham were in a relegation battle, mid-table fodder. We've earned our right to be where we are in and around the top six. We are in the big six financially,
Hmm.
and we got to Champions League finals, and that is because of Levy. He has done that. He has funded the success, you could say, even if it hasn't brought
Hmm.
that much silverware. But as I say, with this sort of new role that he seems to be stepping back and just sort of, letting the people around him dictate, I think that seems like it's going to be a good success. Let him sort the go-karting arena, let him sort the business, let him bring Beyonce to the stadium.
Yeah.
That's where he succeeds.
Well, joking aside, based on an article written this morning in The Athletic, that kind of the Beyonce-ification of the stadium and the go-karting and all of that kind of stuff is what is going to take our kind of stadium revenue, match day stadium revenue, and through the week stadium revenue above Manchester United at the top in terms of the Premier League. And when we're talking about this January, us having the only Premier League club to have spent any money so far, it's that kind of thing that is enabling us to kind of speculate, to accumulate. And that's a reason why, once again, I'll say this, I say it probably quite a lot on here, but it's like, I think it's a matter when it comes to the chairman and to ENIC of be careful what you wish for, because you look at Todd Bowley, you look at, the Glazers, you look at, how many Randy Lerners there've been, or various kind of across the league Asian investors, Reading now, who can't get control of their club, are in danger of going out of business. It's one thing saying, get Levy out, get ENIC out because we haven't won something, but it's another thing when nobody who's ever said that has ever been able to say to me when I've asked who they want to come in, who they know will do a better job. And I just think, a lot of what you said today is what I would put down as dangerous common sense that a corner of the Spurs Twitter fan base would not appreciate. But I am in full agreement with basically pretty much everything you're saying. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is, I don't know if you saw this, but Tim Sherwood has made a bizarre kind of time, or chosen a bizarre time to double down on his abuse of the defensive side of Pedro Porro, considering it's just come after Pedro stuck one in the top bin against Burnley. Yes, maybe he was at fault for a couple of goals in the last game, certainly for one of them. But I think certainly Porro gives us more on the field both ways than needed to talk about him in terms of a negative play. In fact, I know a lot of people have been saying that maybe he's been our best player this season. How do you feel about him?
Well, I did a video a couple months ago calling him one of our most underrated players because, everyone will talk about Maddison when he's in the side, Bentancur when he's come back, these sort of, luxury players, you could say, maybe not in a normal footballing sense. But Poro's just been incredible because he had a lot of, pressure on him as well. Seems to be using the P word quite a lot because he came into this squad, or came into this team in a January transfer window this time last year, and looked like he was a player for another manager. He was set to play in a back three. Then this summer, we knew when Ange came in, he likes to play a back four. And we had two fullbacks, because Destiny Udogie is the same, who are more comfortable in a back three, back five system, whatever you want to call it. So he did have that. And then there was some people saying, well, could he play in the midfield 8 role? Could he play on the wing? Where is this guy going to fit? Emerson Royale's at the club, Jed Spence. We've got so many fullbacks. But he's sort of been perfect in that position. I mean, you highlight Manchester United, but he grew into that game. He got an assist. Rashford was proving tricky, but there's been games this season where he has been impressive in an attacking and defensive sense. I saw Tim Sherwood's comments, and he said about how he has lacked defensively, but I still think that's quite harsh to, hit him with that stick, especially after the weekend where he's probably got more ammo to use that. But if you're going over all the games so far this season, Poro has been fundamental to this team. The fullbacks have been fundamental to this team. Having to invert and be comfortable to receive the ball in midfield and then attack is incredible. I think him and Udogie deserve a lot of praise. And, some people are even saying, are they rivaling Walker and Rose as our best fullback pairing, which I think is quite an interesting debate to have.
Yeah, and I think when we've had a lot of these injuries and suspensions, having Udogie and Porro available to do that inverted role has actually allowed us to continue to make chances. Whereas, let's say we were stuck with, Emerson Royal and Ben Davis, that wouldn't be happening. And I completely agree with that. I also think he's really improved his kind of back stick kind of covering and marking, which was something that he wasn't great at the start. So, there's a little bit with me with Tim Sherwood where I think Tim has, no, I was going to say maybe he's become, actually, I think he's probably always been very forthright and kind of says it exactly as he feels it on the first thing that comes into his mind. But I'm not sure in this one whether he's really got all of the research, and maybe he hasn't been watching all of the games, because it doesn't really ring totally true to me anyway.
Yeah, I feel like it's very much reactionary punditry from him. I mean, he did well sort of criticising I forgot what game it was when he sort of called him out on
It was
Soccer
his first.
Saturday.
It was his first ever game. It was Porro's first ever game. I think it
And that's
was.
just unbelievable.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was. It was certain. I can't remember which game it was, but it was certainly his first one after last January's signing. So yeah,
And
but
the worst thing I got was my friend in my group chat where there was a game, I think it was Wolves last season, where he said something, "Oh, Poro's been good," and then I tuned into the game like on a dodgy stream, and he'd made 2 mistakes. I was like, "Yeah, he doesn't look that good." So since then, my mate's been labelling me as the Tim Sherwood of the group chat, and I'm like, "No, I never. It was a one-off. Please forgive me." But no, I
that
think he's a
that
good
is
player.
that is the kind of thing, Sonny, that would make me not allow you to watch Spurs games anymore. Like if you turn the game on and suddenly we can see 2, it's definitely your fault. Okay, moving on. Obviously, got to talk about Sergio Reguilon. Is seems like he's completed his move on loan to Brentford. I feel like Sergio is in a strange place for his career. He actually did pretty well at Man United. I know a lot of Man United fans, and they were pretty happy with him. He's definitely always a willing player and a willing runner, but kind of falls a bit short in the final third. What do you think is likely from Reguilon at Brentford, and then realistically in the summer when I assume we'll be looking to move him on?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised in the Brentford announcement that there wasn't an option or an obligation to buy whatsoever, because I don't see him having a future at the club, which
Mhm.
is a shame. Because when we bought him, I remember a lot of people saying, because Real Madrid had some of the, well, probably still do have a
Have a
buyback clause.
buyback.
I was like,
Mm.
I got a bit scared about that. I was thinking, oh no, we don't want this player to be taken back. And I think he had a good start to his life at Tottenham. But then again, we seem to have this influx of fullbacks and not knowing what, going from back 4 to back 3 to back 4 again. And he's just fallen by the wayside. He played a lot more minutes than I thought he would at
United,
Manchester
yeah.
United. And even I was speaking to Mark Goldbridge recently for Talksport, and he was ranking all of Eric Ten Hag's signings, and he put Reguilon quite high out of the 16. But then when you actually match up against some of the other signings Man United have made, it makes a lot of sense. I think Brentford is a good move for him. They're having a tricky season, obviously, without Ivan Toney, but they haven't got Rico Henry in
Yeah,
that
who I
fullback
really
left
rate
back
as well.
position.
He's excellent, Rico Henry, I think.
He'll be good. So I think Reguilon could slot in that position for the time being. But it's just a shame. I feel like you might agree with me, Barnaby. It's a shame that this player didn't come to fruition, but we now have Destiny Udogie. So I think most of the fan base will not mind.
Yeah, it's levels. And I think he kind of, along with Dyer, in fact, potentially 2 of the main players to have suffered from Ange coming in and this style of play, and it just not just being not quite having the attributes required for a fullback with Ange Ball. And actually, with the rumours this week that Sessegnon's been told he can leave as well, I think it'll be really interesting in the summer to see if they look to bring another fullback in on the left who maybe can play inverted a bit better as well to cover for Udogie. Because we're obviously going to have European games. I say obviously, but I assume we're going to have European games.
You'd
Fuck
hope
it,
so.
I'll say it. We're definitely going to have Champions League games next season. Alfie Divine has been recalled from his loan deal at Port Vale, where the Port Vale fans love him so much that he had to do a goodbye video to them, like Eric Dyer
8 minutes
style.
long.
8
8 minutes
minutes
long, that
long,
video. I couldn't believe
longer
it.
than the Harry Kane goodbye video that we got. And he has quickly been moved to Plymouth to join Ashley Phillips. And from what I've read, the Plymouth manager has dealt with Alfie Divine in the England age groups and stuff like that. From the sense I get is that within the club, there are great hopes for Alfie Divine. And the little I've seen him, he does look like a really good young prospect. This just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, you mentioned it there. Plymouth and Tottenham seem to be getting a little bit of a relationship going with Ashley Phillips and Alfie Devine both going there. And it's just great to see on the whole. I think, I hate bringing them up, but under Jose and Conte, we were not seeing youth players come through. We were not seeing them loaned out properly unless they were just like wasteful loans and just like, well, use here, go out and just
Mhm.
get some minutes, but you're not going to have a future at the moment. But it's good to see a player like Devine, starring so well in Port Vale's run. I think they went on a good run in the Carabao Cup.
Yeah.
Sadly got knocked out of that. But yeah, I think Plymouth's a good step, a league up, even though it's a league down from the Premier League. I think that would be good. Maybe Devine could look at getting some minutes in and around the first team for next season, or maybe a Premier League loan would be good for him as well. But, thinking of, Don Lee has been in and around the first team. Yayo Santiago was on the
Yeah.
bench at the
Hmm.
weekend, to name a few. And Alfie Dorrington as well. I didn't want to forget certain individuals. But yeah, I feel like Tottenham love having, one of their own. Harry Kane was one of our own. Ollie Skip has still been around as one of our own. He is still a fan favorite, even though I still think he, sometimes he can have a good game, sometimes he can have a bad game, but I
He,
still feel like, he shows grit and determination, which is what a Spurs fan
yeah,
has.
yeah.
So I really want Alfie Divine to, crack on now and become, if he can become a first team regular in the next 3 to 4 years, I think the fan base will be happy with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, he looks really talented. And of course, Ashley Phillips had a good game in his first game for Plymouth, got man of the match at the weekend. And they're kind of fighting down at the bottom of the championship. I think it's really good news where we've had quite a lot of loan deals over the years. You alluded to this, but even at the moment at Augsburg with Tanganga, where
That's it, yeah.
players aren't getting minutes or aren't really enjoying it over there. It's really good news that Alfie Divine kind of went to League One, really kind of knuckled down, became a fan favourite, and now he can go to Plymouth with confidence. And if he can get in the team there, then absolutely, there's no reason why in pre-season I can't see him getting loads of minutes and try and impress Ange some more. Now I want to come into something that's not necessarily a Spurs rumour, but I wonder whether it could be a Spurs rumour, which is Ivan Toney has done an interview and he's come out today and he's said that, some are saying quite disrespectfully, considering he hasn't played for 8 months and got done for gambling, that he wants to join a top club. And he says, it might be this January, it might not, but he wants to be up there challenging for titles and stuff like that, is what he said, which I assume he means kind of top 4. I wondered whether you, Sonny, would be interested in pushing towards the kind of 60 million quid that I reckon it would take to get Ivan Toney away from Brentford.
I just think the striker market at the moment is quite baffling. It's the reason we've gone in for Timo Werner for the time being, because it's a cheaper option. It's a sensible option, you could say. When we're talking about the modern striker, you're looking at Tony's available, Victor Osimhen's available, but you're looking at 100 million for him and a Real Madrid potential signing, or Chelsea if they want to go in for him. And even like I've touted on my channel sometimes, if we couldn't get Tony, Dominic Solanke, but with his form, you're probably looking at a 40 to 50 million pound player.
Oh yeah.
Even though he's had one good season under his belt, or this season so far.
He could be Michael Ricketts. He could be Michael Bridges. He could be a one-season guy.
That's the problem. And I think he's got the potential because he's showing it under a better attacking coach in Iriola. But with Tony, I mean, you'd like to test Brentford's resolve on him and see if you could get him out of there. But it seems to be, I don't know if it's a media thing, but it seems to be Arsenal are the ones who are the favourites of the front runners, whether it's, someone like Piers Morgan talking about him, or, Alan Pardew seems to be all touting him in that direction because they desperately need a striker. But, if the season carries on and, people, Gary Neville at the weekend saying that we're in the title race and could we finish above Liverpool or Arsenal, then maybe he could end up at us. But I don't know. It depends on, there's a lot of situations that have to happen. I think we have to see what happens with Werner. Is Richarlison in a purple patch, or is he actually the man to lead Spurs' line for years to come? But I said this on a video ages ago. I dread to think, if you had Ivan Toney with Kulusevski, Maddison, Bentancur all whipping balls into him, he'd be the perfect hold-up play, aerially, ball to feet, everything. He would be fantastic. And, not many people could replace Harry Kane, but he could come somewhat of the way.
Is there an element, I don't know if you saw this today, that one of the journos has come out and said that Man City have been told that their kind of investigation is going to be a bit sooner than they thought, because it was touted for the end of next year. But I saw something, I don't know what tier it is, but but that maybe it might be quicker. Is there any chance that Daniel Levy thinks, if that happens in the next couple of months and they suddenly get a 50-point deduction, there really is a Premier League title to be scrapped for, at which point he might think, should I open my purse strings? I'm the only chairman in the country right now, or in the Premier League, able to spend any money. Should I open my purse strings for a little £55 million bid for Ivan Toney?
I mean, I'd love that to happen, Barnaby, but this is Daniel Levy we are talking about, even though I've probably sung a bit of his praises this video.
I've gone too far, Sonny. I've gone too far. I got too excited.
That's the thing. I mean, there's all talk about midfielders. Conor Gallagher, I've just saw your video went up. I was watching that before I joined. Some really interesting points there. And I just think it depends where, because even in the summer, and I've seen a lot of people talking about this, we've now, going a bit off topic, we've now sorted our defence for a good couple of years to come. In the summer, there isn't much surgery that needs doing. Maybe a few positions need backing, like you mentioned, the fullbacks there. And for some squad depth. But or you just go all in and sign a statement signing. You see Arsenal put 100 million down for Rice. Why can't we then, if we're so profitable and, one of the bigger clubs when it comes to money in the Premier League, why can't we, throw our weight around a bit? It would be, it'd be a sign of intent, back this manager, back this project and get someone like Tony in. I mean, oh, you're making me dream now. That's the worst thing.
Well, I'll finish the Ivan Toney link that I've created with this question. If Ivan Toney did come into Spurs, would he go in straight in as the 9 ahead of Richarlison? Despite the fact Richarlison scored 7 in 6 or 7 in 7 or whatever it is.
I mean, obviously, Ivan Toney hasn't played for a couple of months due to his betting scandal, so you wonder how he would be. But to me, Tony seems like one of those players where, I could imagine during COVID, he was like the professional and always training and, with a lack of minutes or stuff like that. So I could imagine as soon as he starts again for Brentford, he's going to be a duck to water again. I believe he'll, I mean, Brentford will hope he is because they've got a severe lack of goals with Mbuemo and Vissa missing the last couple of weeks. So yeah, I mean,
you're sitting on the fence, Sonny. Would you pick him over Richarlison?
Yes, I'm going to have to say yes because Richarlison, even though at the weekend he had one of his better games in the Spurs shirt in general, I feel like there's still so many people who say when he's through on goal, Kane would have scored that, or even when Werner was at the back post, Kane would have been there. Like, Ivan Toney is the type of striker who would.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's because we are completely entitled because we've had a decade of Harry Kane. We don't know, basically us and Liverpool with Salah, really, other than everybody else doesn't know what it's like to be as entitled as we have been, where we've had an absolutely elite finisher for the last 10 years, and we're just getting used to it. The reality is Richarlison is just missing the chances that most strikers tend to miss quite regularly, in my opinion. And I think he's done well since he's had that little bit of surgery. And I definitely still think there's a long-term future for Richarlison. And the good thing for Richarlison, and it suits Ange ball, is that he can play on the left as well. I think Ange really likes players who are versatile. Just before I let you leave, Sonny, just a couple of links to talk about. This João Gomez from Wolves one doesn't seem to go away. I think that might be because Wolves might need to have another look at selling a player for the kind of financial side of things. And there's a little link I saw with a Real Sociedad attacking midfielder, Ander Berentencia. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I've had a little look at him. Kind of looks like a dribbly winger. When I listen to the Extra Inch, Nathan's always talking about how we need a dribbly winger, and he's a kind of left-sided Brazilian 22-year-old who Arsenal are also interested in. So just to kind of ask you more than anything, do you envisage us getting anyone else through the door by the end of January?
At the moment, these links don't seem as solid as, Werner happened in a couple of days. And Dragusin was completed quite quickly. A little bit, it was dragged out a bit for Dragusin. But that was because Bayern sort of came in, didn't they? But midfielder news doesn't seem to be going away. I think a winger now will be explored in the summer. We were linked with Antonio Nusa from Bruges. We were linked with Santiago Jimenez. I think some of these players are hard to get out mid-season. You look at Feyenoord, they're absolutely thriving in the Eredivisie. But, with the players you mentioned there, I think João Gomez looks like a top talent. I think he is like the third highest tackler in the league, behind I think Pedro Porro's up there as well, and people say he's not good defensively, Tim Sherwood, and obviously João Palhinha as well. He's Portugal international teammate. So I mean, I like the idea of him because apart from Sarr, I think at the weekend against Manchester United, we saw there was a severe lack of of a Sarr sort of player, who was sort of there to do the dirty work. Exactly. But to answer that question completely, I don't think anything will happen unless we sell. And I don't think we're going to sell the likes of Højbjerg, for example, because he's the key name who keeps being linked away until the summer. So I could imagine I think we've done the business that we needed to do. Anything else now would be quite nice. And I think Ange and Levy and Johan Lang are probably now preparing for the summer, even though it seems like ages away.
You might be right. I guess it might come down to whether, let's say, Juventus are willing to stump up 20-odd mil for Højbjerg, in which case maybe then they'd look at it. Is it worth pushing the boat out for a Gallagher or for a Gomez at that point? Okay, just finally, before we leave, Yves Bissouma's got malaria. I mean, to be honest, it was the only thing missing from our kind of operation
Sick
style.
list.
Yeah, sick list this season. Bring Darren Anderton back, add him in there as well. I don't know what your medical qualifications are like. How long can you get over malaria in these days? He only played 50 odd minutes in there in Marley's opener, didn't he?
Well, when I think of malaria, I just think of, do you remember when Cheryl Cole had it a few,
I
10
actually
years ago or
don't,
so?
and I usually pride myself on my Girls Aloud knowledge.
Oh, but yeah, I'm not sure the situation with this. Apparently, it's not as bad as people first thought. But yeah, as you say, it seems like we've had every injury under the book. Even like Kulusevski was ill the other day. Skip had a bug. Like, it seems to just be, whatever gets thrown at Tottenham, we seem to be getting through it though. So
We
all's
bounce off
well.
it. As long as he doesn't bring his malaria back from the African Cup of Nations and
Stop our title charge.
Exactly, infect everyone else. Sonny, thank you so much for coming on the show. Let the audience know where they can come and subscribe to your content, mate.
Yes, Sonny Talk Spurs on YouTube and Sonny Snelling on all my socials. Got videos pretty much every other day. You can become a member on my channel now as well. Get an exclusive podcast that I've called Nice One Sonny, because you can see what I've done there.
Yeah,
but yeah, come out and check it. Lots of good content. What a good season to be involved with Tottenham.
Exactly. Guys, make sure you do that. And also, you can also be a member of my channels. You can join Patreon, or you can be a member on our YouTube, which is called the Spurred on Pro membership. It's only £1 a month. You get some nice extras like early videos, guaranteed comment replies, and members only Q&A and live shows, etc., etc. So find your way to the description box to work out how to do that. I really appreciate all of your support. Thanks so much for watching. Do press that subscribe button if you're on YouTube, or go over to the podcast platform Spotify or Apple Podcasts and press subscribe or follow. But most importantly, come on, you Spurs.